Single dad thought he was helping a lost tourist. She's a billionaire escaping her wedding. Jack Dawson had long ago traded noise for silence, rush for routine. His cafe, a narrow wood-paneled diner perched on the edge of Highway 17, wasn't anything fancy. It smelled of maple syrup, old coffee, and the faint scent of lemon cleaner he used every night before locking up. Locals called it Dawson's Stop, and on most days that's all it was, a stop. He liked it that way. The mornings belonged to him and his daughter Lily, who'd sit on the counter swinging her feet while reading from whatever book she brought from school. She wasn't there this morning, though. Tuesdays were with Grandma. So Jack opened alone, the old neon open sign flickering to life with a weak hum just as the sun crept over the pines. It was quiet until it wasn't. He saw her through the window. At first he thought it was a trick of the early fog, a figure by the roadside clutching a small silver purse and looking over her shoulder like she was lost or running. Her long hair, soaked from the mist, clung to her face. She wasn't dressed for Willow Creek, not in white satin, and shoes that looked like they'd never touched gravel. She didn't even have a coat. Jack wiped his hands on a towel and pushed through the cafe door, the bell above him jangling. "Miss," he called gently, careful not to startle her. She turned eyes wide. There was a kind of panic in her expression that people only carried when they'd left something important behind. Or someone. She began, then stopped. Her voice cracked. I think I'm lost." Jack studied her, not just the dress, which looked like something off the cover of a bridal magazine, but the streak of mascara down her cheek. Her shoes were dangling from her fingers. Her hair had pins in it. Wedding pins. "You're about an hour from the city," he said softly. "This road doesn't lead much of anywhere." She looked down at her feet, embarrassed. "That's kind of the point." Jack nodded slowly. He didn't press her, didn't ask what he could've. Instead, he stepped aside. "Come in. Warm up." She hesitated, then stepped past him and into the cafe, her breath catching at the sudden wave of warmth and the smell of cinnamon rolls fresh from the oven. He motioned to the corner booth near the window, the one where he usually sat with Lily on slow afternoons. "Coffee?" he asked. She nodded. He poured her a cup, set it down gently in front of her, and returned to the counter to give her space. But from the corner of his eye, he watched her shoulders begin to shake. She was trying not to cry. Jack didn't interrupt. He just turned on the radio, soft jazz filling the space like a gentle umbrella, and busied himself with wiping down a counter that was already clean. After a while, she spoke. "Thank you." He looked over. Shed removed the pins from her hair, letting it fall freely down her shoulders. She looked less like a bride and more like someone trying to remember who she was underneath all that. "Name's Jack," he said. She hesitated. "Claire." "All right, Claire," he said kindly. "You hungry?" She smiled weakly. "Starving." Claire sat in the corner booth like a porcelain figurine placed in the wrong room. The coffee steamed in front of her untouched, her hands delicate but trembling wrapped around the mug as if the warmth alone might anchor her. Jack stole another glance from behind the counter. He was careful about it, had learned not to pry, not after what life had handed him. Still, she was out of place. Not just the silk and satin kind of out of place, but the kind of loss that didn't come from wrong turns on a map. Her dress, ivory with lace sleeves, had a rip along the bottom hem, jagged and raw. Dust clung to the satin like Shed walked far down a road that wasn't meant for shoes like those, and her feet bare now were red from gravel and cold. The fancy heels Shed been carrying earlier sat abandoned on the floor by her booth. Jack grabbed a clean towel, ran it under warm water, and approached slowly. "You look like you ran through half the county," he said gently, setting the damp towel on the table. She gave a breath of a laugh, but it was hollow. "I think I did. Want to talk about it?" Claire hesitated. She looked around the cafe as if suddenly realizing how quiet it was. The ticking clock on the wall, the low hum of the refrigerator, the faint sound of a country song drifting in from the kitchen, it all made the silence between them feel sacred, not empty. "I wasn't supposed to be here," she said finally, voice small. Jack sat across from her without asking permission. I figured that. She glanced down at her dress, smoothing it out with shaking hands. I was supposed to be in a ballroom right now, saying vows, posing for photographs, smiling at people I barely know. I was supposed to become someone's wife, but you're not. No, she whispered. I ran. Jack didn't flinch. He just nodded like he'd heard stories like this 100 times even though he hadn't. But grief and confusion had no class divide, had learned that too. She might have been rich judging by the dress, but right now she just looked human. Scared. Real. Good thing you found my calf, he said. Claire's lips quirked into something resembling a smile. I didn't find it. I think it found me. Outside, a pickup truck rumbled by on the empty road. Neither of them moved. The moment was fragile. Jack stood and walked to the kitchen. Wait here, he said. You look like you haven't eaten in days. I haven't eaten since yesterday's rehearsal dinner, she admitted. He paused, then said over his shoulder, Then you're long overdue for pancakes. She let out a real laugh this time, quiet, soft, but real. When Jack returned, he placed a plate in front of her with 2 fluffy buttermilk pancakes, a drizzle of syrup, and a side of sliced strawberries. No frills, just warmth. Claire stared at the food, blinking quickly. No one's ever made me pancakes before, she said. Jack raised an eyebrow. You're kidding. She shook her head. Everything in my life came in boxes or was ordered by assistants. No one ever cooked for me. Not like this. Well, Jack said as he refilled her coffee, we do things different here in Willow Creek. She picked up her fork with a kind of reverence, as though this small kindness meant more than any catered luxury ever had. Outside, the wind rustled the pines. Inside, a billionaire sat in a dusty wedding dress eating pancakes made by a single dad who had no idea she would change his life forever. And hers was already beginning to change. Jack wiped his hands on a dish towel as he stepped back from the booth, watching the stranger eat with quiet hunger. Measured, polite, like she wasn't used to letting herself take up space. Every now and then, Shed glanced toward the window, half expecting a black SUV to roll up, or a familiar voice to call her name. But the road stayed empty. The silence stayed safe. You want seconds? He asked after a while. She looked up quickly, almost startled. Her lips still glistened with syrup. No, thank you. This was more than enough. Jack nodded and offered a small smile. You're welcome. I figured anyone who shows up in a wedding dress with blisters on her feet deserves a meal. She stiffened at that. Her eyes flicked downward as if remembering the gown she wore and how absurdly out of place it made her. I can find you a change of clothes, he added gently. Something simple. My sister left a few things here last winter. That's kind of you, she said softly. But I won't be staying long. Still, Jack said, pulling out a chair across from her again. You'll freeze out there once the sun drops. We're near the mountains. It gets cold fast. She looked at him, then really looked. His face was weathered, but kind. His jaw rough with stubble. His eyes tired in a way that only fathers and people who'd learned to live with less carried. He wasn't suspicious, just steady. You're not going to ask me what I'm running from. I figure you'll tell me if you want to. Jack replied. A pause. Then she smiled faintly. You're different. I hear that a lot. He waited a moment, then asked, What should I call you? Her smile faded. The tension returned in her shoulders. I'd rather not say, she replied, voice careful. At least not yet. Jack didn't flinch. You don't have to. Everyone's allowed to keep their name until they're ready to use it. She blinked. You don't think that's suspicious? I think it's your business, he said. You showed up in trouble. You didn't hurt anyone. You don't owe me a name. Just maybe let me help if you'll let me. For a long moment she stared at the steam rising from her coffee. Then she nodded once. I could use some rest, she admitted. I've got a cot in the back room. It's not much, but it's warm. You trust strangers that easily? She asked, almost teasing. No, Jack said, but I trust my gut. She studied him for a beat, then whispered, Thank you. Jack stood, leaving her with the coffee. As he walked toward the back room to gather blankets and clean clothes, he said over his shoulder, You don't have to tell me who you are yet. Just tell me if you need anything. She watched him disappear behind the curtain, her eyes stinging unexpectedly. No one had asked her that in a long time, not without an agenda, not without expecting something in return. She looked down at her dress again. The lace was torn. The illusion of perfection was shredded. But for the first time in hours, maybe longer, she didn't feel like she had to keep performing. And even without her name, someone still saw her. The spare room above Jack's garage wasn't anything fancy. The walls were thin, and the window stuck halfway when you tried to open it, but it was dry clean and smelled faintly of cedar and soap. He led her across the small backyard behind the cafe, a quiet plot where Lily's bike leaned crooked against a fence and wildflowers had taken over the edges. The air was cooler now, the mountain wind tugging gently at her tangled hair and torn dress. She held the borrowed sweater tight around her. Jack unlocked the garage and flicked on the overhead light. There's a set of stairs in the back, he said, nodding to the side. Room small but private. You'll be safe up there. She hesitated. Why are you doing this? Jack turned and met her eyes, his voice simple. Because someone helped me once when I didn't deserve it. And because you look like you need a place to breathe. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. He handed her a folded bundle of soft clothes neatly stacked. There's a towel and toothbrush in the bathroom upstairs, too. If you want a shower. He'll be in the house next door if you need anything. She took the bundle carefully like it was something precious. As Jack turned to leave, she called out softly, Wait. He paused at the foot of the stairs. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to run. From everything. You don't owe me an explanation. Jack said, his tone kind but firm. You don't need to apologize for surviving. Then after a beat, he added, Rest. We'll talk tomorrow, if you want. She nodded barely. Thank you again. Jack gave a quiet nod and walked off into the night, leaving her standing alone in the glow of the light above the garage. Upstairs, the room was plain. A twin bed, a bookshelf with a few old paperbacks, a dusty lamp. She ran her fingers over the edge of the desk and slowly lowered herself onto the bed. For the first time in days, her hands stopped shaking. She peeled off the wedding dress, carefully, deliberately, and folded it into a corner. It looked strange there, like something left behind at the end of a story that no longer belonged to her. Then she showered. The water was lukewarm but steady, and as it ran through her hair and down her back, she felt a different kind of weight begin to lift. No reporters, no cameras, no angry voices or diamond necklaces being clasped too tight, no locked doors in penthouse hotels, just quiet, just breathing. Wrapped in soft, borrowed clothes, she climbed into the bed, pulled the blanket around her shoulders, and stared up at the ceiling. And for the first time since she'd fled the altar, she allowed herself to cry. Not out of fear, but relief. Morning light spilled over the sleepy town of Maplewood like honey, soft, slow, and golden. The cafe opened with its usual rhythm. Coffee brewed in the back. The bell above the door chimed when the first regulars shuffled in, and Jack flipped the open sign just as the clock struck 7. But today there was something different in the air. It started small. A curious glance from Mrs. Dorsey when she passed by with her poodle. A lingering look from Tom the mailman, who noticed the window above Jack's garage had a light on late last night. Whispers over coffee became more pointed. Did you see that girl walking in last night? She wasn't from around here, that's for sure. She looked like she'd been crying. And her dress, did you see that dress? Jack felt the shift immediately. In a small town, new faces always made a ripple. But a mysterious woman showing up late at night hiding in borrowed clothes was a splash too big to ignore. By mid-morning, Claire Baldwin, owner of the flower shop 2 doors down, and Maplewood's unofficial newswire, dropped by the cafe for her usual muffin and tea. But today she lingered. So she began casually leaning on the counter. "Any news on your..." Guess Jack didn't look up from the register. "She's resting." Claire smiled thinly. "People are talking, Jack. A woman shows up in the rain, no name, no explanation. Some say she looked like a runaway bride. People can say what they want." Jack replied, calm but firm. She didn't hurt anyone. Just needed a place to stay. Claire leaned in, her voice lower now. "Don't take this the wrong way, but you've got Lily to think about." Now Jack did look up, his eyes steady, protective. "I am thinking about Lily," he said, "and the kind of person I want her to grow up to be. If someone needs help, you help them. You don't turn away just because it might make your morning gossip more exciting." Claire blinked, caught off guard. Jack continued, quieter now. "She's scared. That's all he'll say. She's not a threat. And if anyone in this town still believes in kindness, then they'll leave her be." Claire, sensing the steel beneath his calm, backed off. "All right, Jack. Just be careful." He gave a small nod and turned back to the espresso machine. By noon, the whispers hadn't stopped, but they had softened, because when Jack Cole spoke, people listened. Not because he was loud, but because he was good, dependable. A single dad who fixed broken chairs at the school without being asked. Who made grilled cheese for the local kids when the power went out. And now the whole town knew he was quietly guarding a mystery woman in his spare room. Some didn't like it, but most respected it. Above the cafe, she sat by the window sipping tea, watching the little town shift and stir. She could feel the eyes on her even from here. But she also saw something else. A man walking out to the street to fix the loose calf sign, then offering her a gentle wave before going back inside. A man who didn't ask for her name or her story, only offered her a place to rest. For the first time in her life, someone was protecting her without wanting anything in return. And she didn't even know how to thank him for that yet. The quiet hours came after Lily went to bed, and the cafe's lights dimmed. The world outside slowed down, and so did Jack. That night, like the one before, he found her sitting on the back porch step, wrapped in the flannel blanket he'd left folded over the sofa. The stars were out bright and scattered across the open sky, the kind of stars city people forgot existed. Crickets hummed in the grass. Somewhere far off, a dog barked once and fell silent. Jack stepped outside holding 2 mismatched mugs. Steam curled above the rim of each. "Hope you're not allergic to cinnamon," he said, offering one. She smiled, a tired, cautious sort of smile, but reached for the mug. "Smells like something my grandmother used to make." "That's high praise," he said, taking a seat beside her on the step. "It's just cider. Instant mix. Don't tell your grandmother." She chuckled. The sound surprised them both. For a while they sipped in silence. Jack didn't press. She didn't offer. But something about the dark, about the way the stars stretched so far, and the world felt small and quiet, made it easier to speak. "It's peaceful here," she said softly. Jack nodded. "That's why I stayed. You weren't born here, Num. I was passing through, years ago. Then Lily came along and, well, this town felt like a good place to raise her. Honest place. People look out for each other. Mostly." She glanced sideways. "Even when they don't know who they're helping." He met her eyes, especially then. The warmth in her chest wasn't from the cider. It was from the way he said it, like kindness wasn't conditional, like decency didn't have to be earned. She stared down at her hands. "I wasn't running away from danger," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "At least not the kind people expect." Jack waited. She drew in a breath. "I was supposed to marry someone yesterday. He's rich, polished, strategic. My father thinks he's perfect. My mother calls him a brilliant match. Jack kept quiet. But he doesn't love me, she said. Not really. And I don't love him. We were just merging empires. The words sounded ridiculous out loud, like a business deal, not a wedding. I didn't even pick the dress, she added, voice dry. I was told it would photograph well. Jack didn't flinch. He just asked, "So you left?" She nodded. I got in the town car, waited until we hit the turnpike. Then I asked the driver to stop for a bathroom break at a gas station. I didn't come back. He let that settle. Then gently, "And you've been walking ever since?" "No," she admitted. "I tried to find a bus. Got lost. It started raining. Then I saw the calf sign." She looked up at him. "That's everything. Except my name." Jack smiled softly. "You can keep that part as long as you need." Her lips trembled, just a little, and she looked away, blinking hard. "You're not going to tell anyone. Not unless you want me to." The porch light buzzed above them, and somewhere in the house the clock chimed once. A full hour had passed. She stood up slowly, still holding the mug. "Thank you, Jack." He rose too. "There's pie inside. Leftover from the calf. Apple. A little burnt on the edges." "I love burnt pie crust," she said. He arched an eyebrow. "You're the first person I've ever met who said that." She smiled again. A real one this time. That night they sat at the kitchen counter, 2 slices of pie between them, her laughter echoing softly off the walls. She didn't say her name. He didn't ask. But for the first time in a long time she felt safe just being her. The house was quiet the next morning, but her mind wasn't. She stood alone in the bathroom, holding a hand towel and staring blankly into the mirror. Her reflection looked unfamiliar flannel borrowed from Jack's laundry basket, hair tied back with one of Lily's old scrunchies, and no makeup. Not a trace of the woman who had once appeared in glossy society magazines. And yet, beneath the tired eyes, she was still there. Her fingers trembled as she turned on the faucet. Cold water shocked her palms, grounding her just enough. But the flashbacks came anyway. The scent of roses, thousands of them meticulously arranged for the wedding aisle. The rustle of silk as the tailor fussed with the hem of the dress, warning her not to breathe too deeply lest she ruin the silhouette. The weight of the diamond ring, so large it pinched her finger. And the voice of her mother, firm and sugar-coated. "Just smile, darling. Do your duty. You'll thank us someday." Shed smiled in the mirror that morning, smiled like a good daughter should. And then she'd walked away. A sharp knock at the bathroom door startled her. "You okay, Jax?" Voice low and gentle. "Yeah," she replied quickly. "Just slow mornings." He didn't press. She appreciated that. When she stepped back into the kitchen, Jack was packing Lily's lunch. The smell of toasted bread filled the air. Lily sat at the table, drawing something with crayons, a picture of 3 people and a dog. She looked up and waved brightly. "I drew you too," Lily said. She looked closer. A tall man with brown hair, Jack. A little girl with pigtails, clearly Lily. And next to them a woman in a blue dress holding an umbrella. "That's me," she asked, surprised. Lily nodded. "I didn't know your name, so I just called you Hope Lady." Jack laughed under his breath. "She names everyone. Hope Lady," she repeated quietly. Something about that broke her heart a little. She smiled, crouching down next to Lily. "Thank you. It's beautiful." But even as she smiled, the mansion returned in her mind. The cold stone floors, the gold-rimmed invitations, the planner speaking in rapid French, her fiancé rehearsing a speech he'd written himself about legacy, not love, and the knowing look from the driver just before she fled. "Good luck, miss," he had said. "Whatever you choose." She hadn't looked back. That morning in the cafe, she folded napkins to keep her hands busy. Jack handed her a mug and she sipped the warmth like a shield. No one asked why she was quiet. And yet in the stillness of that morning, with crayon drawings, grilled cheese crusts, and kindness offered without a price, she felt a different kind of memory forming. One that didn't come with diamonds or expectations. One that smelled like cinnamon, sounded like laughter, and looked like a porch swing under stars. The morning sun poured through the calf windows like liquid gold, casting long shadows on the checkered floor. The day had barely begun, but Lily was already halfway through her second drawing, a swirling tornado of blue and green, which she declared was how a heart feels when it's happy and scared at the same time. She was 7. She said things like that. The woman smiled, watching her from the corner table as Jack restocked the napkin holders and hummed under his breath. Lily had taken to the stranger quickly, as children often do when they sense someone lonely but kind. "Do you have a little girl?" Lily asked casually, peeling the wrapper off her crayon. The woman blinked. "No, I don't." Lily nodded thoughtfully, as if that answered something important in her head. "You'd be a good mom. You cut my sandwich into hearts yesterday. Only Daddy used to do that." The woman looked down at the crumbs on her plate. Her fingers tightened around her tea mug. "Your daddy's a good man." "He is," Lily agreed. "He works a lot. Sometimes he forgets to sleep." A beat of silence stretched between them. Then Lily leaned in, lowering her voice like they were conspiring. "Are you a secret princess?" The woman laughed, an honest, startled sound. "What?" "You talk fancy sometimes," Lily said with a shrug. "And you said linen instead of napkin. And when you said thank you, you did this." Lily gave a little nod, and half curtsy, imitating the elegant poise of someone far older. The woman covered her mouth, trying to hide her smile. "I'm not a princess," she whispered. "But I did run away." Lily's eyes widened. "From a dragon." "No," the woman said softly. "From a big mistake." Lily tilted her head. "Did you get lost?" "Something like that." The little girl seemed to weigh that in her head. "Well, I'm glad you found us." The words hit the woman harder than she expected. There it was, that unfiltered, bone-deep honesty that only children seem to possess. Lily didn't need to know her past to care about her present, and that made it harder to keep the walls up. Jack walked over just then, wiping his hands on a towel. "Hey, Lil, did you finish your homework?" "Already done?" Lily beamed. "Me and the Hope Lady were talking." "Hope Lady?" Jack asked, raising an eyebrow. Lily grinned. "It's what I call her." Jack turned to the woman. "I hope you don't mind the nickname." She shook her head. "It's perfect." And for a moment, sitting at that sunlit table with the smell of coffee and baked goods around them, she forgot about the mansion, the press, the canceled vows. She was just a woman in a borrowed flannel talking to a little girl who made her heart ache and heal at the same time. It started with a shadow on the road. Jack noticed it first, late afternoon, just after closing the cafe early to fix the fence behind the house. The neighborhood was quiet, their stretch of town even more so, with only 3 houses on the block and a gravel road that mostly led nowhere. But today, parked just beyond the curve of the maple trees, was a sleek black car with tinted windows and engines still faintly humming. He didn't recognize it, and that meant something. Jack wiped his hands on his jeans and watched from his porch for a moment longer. Whoever was in the vehicle didn't get out. No movement. Just the soft hum and the stillness that didn't belong in this part of town. Inside the house was warm. Claire, though she still hadn't given her real name, was sitting cross-legged on the rug with Lily braiding doll hair and laughing at Lily's fashion show. It was domestic, sweet, quiet in a way that made Jack's chest tighten. He didn't want to ruin it. Not yet. But as the sun dipped and the car stayed parked, something in his gut twisted. Years of working night shifts and keeping an eye out for trouble had trained him well. And this wasn't nothing. When he finally stepped back inside, Claire looked up immediately. "You okay?" she asked, her smile soft but slightly cautious. He hesitated. "There's a car parked just down the road. Tinted windows. Been sitting there for a while." He saw it then, the flicker in her eyes. Barely a second, but it was there. Panic. Recognition. She masked it well. Sat up straighter. Smiled again. Maybe someone got lost. Jack nodded slowly. Maybe. But she didn't look convinced. And neither was he. He waited until Lily went upstairs for her bath before speaking again. Claire was in the kitchen stirring sugar into her tea, absently, her back to him. "Claire," he said gently, "you don't have to tell me everything. But if someone's looking for you, if you're in trouble, I need to know." Her shoulders rose and fell with a shallow breath. Then silence. Finally, she turned mug cradled in her hands. "I didn't think they'd find me this fast." Jack didn't move. "So that car. Probably someone from my family. Or worse, someone they hired." Her voice was low now. Distant. "You're not just a lost tourist," Jack said quietly. "No," she admitted, meeting his eyes. "And I'm not just running away from a wedding. I'm running from the life they built for me." Jack nodded once. "You safe with me. But we need to be smart." A beat of silence. Then softly, gratefully, she said, "Thank you." They turned the porch light off early that night, closed the curtains, and though no one knocked on the door or rang the bell, the car remained for another hour before it finally pulled away into the dark. But the unease lingered, because now Jack knew for sure that this wasn't just about kindness anymore. He was involved, and someone else was watching. The air in the house was thick with quiet, the kind of quiet that came after truth had been circling for too long, brushing shoulders, stealing glances, waiting to be named. Jack had just finished tucking Lily into bed, her soft breathing already steady and slow. Downstairs, the lights were dim. Only the kitchen lamp glowed, casting a soft amber halo around the woman sitting at the table, her fingers wrapped tightly around a mug that had long gone cold. She didn't look up when Jack walked in. "I suppose it's time," she said softly. Jack didn't press. He slid into the chair across from her and waited. He'd always known when to speak, and when silence was the better kindness. She took a breath. "My name isn't Claire." Jack nodded slowly, unsurprised. "It's Elena," she said. "Elena Whitmore." The name dropped like a stone in the center of a still lake. Jack didn't blink, but something changed in the air. He'd heard the name before anyone who'd watched the news in the last decade had. The Whitmore family was one of those dynasties, real estate, tech, media. Old money and newer empires. Billions, maybe more. Elena didn't look like a billionaire now. Not in the oversized flannel shed borrowed or the borrowed peace in her eyes. "I was supposed to get married last Saturday," she continued. "It was set to be the wedding of the year. Magazine covers, celebrity chefs, 1,500 guests, drones with confetti. A partnership worth billions. 2 families, 2 empires." She paused. Her eyes were distant now. They kept calling it a merger. Jack's voice was quiet. "Not a marriage." She nodded. "He's a decent man. Cold, but not cruel. But I didn't love him. Not the way a person should love someone they promise forever to." "So you ran," Jack said, not judging, just understanding. "I didn't mean to end up here," Elena said. "I didn't even pack properly. I got in the first cab I saw at dawn. I threw my phone out the window. I had some cash, my passport, and no plan. I just knew I couldn't go through with it." Jack let that settle. Then, "What about your family? They'll be furious. Or embarrassed." Or both. Elena said, lips tight. But I couldn't keep pretending. I wanted something real. Something quiet. Not private jets and board meetings disguised as dinners. Jack folded his hands on the table. And now you're here. In a little town with a tired man and his daughter and a calf that smells like burnt toast every morning. She finally smiled. And I've never felt safer. A long silence passed between them. I should leave, she whispered after a moment. I shouldn't drag you into this. You didn't drag me into anything, Jack said. You knocked on a door and I answered it. That's all. Elena looked at him, and this time her eyes didn't flinch. I don't know what happens next. You don't have to, Jack said simply. We'll figure it out. One day at a time. And for the first time since she'd run, she believed that maybe she could. Jack had never minded being a simple man. He liked coffee brewed in a tin kettle, the sound of Lily's laughter after school, and the rhythm of work that left his hands sore, but his heart steady. His world was small but steady. Predictable. His. But now he was lying awake in a house that felt slightly too quiet, staring at the ceiling and replaying a name over and over in his mind, Elena Whitmore. It was still hard to reconcile that the woman who helped Lily fold laundry and laughed at knock-knock jokes was also the same woman who used to grace headlines and gala red carpets, who had more money in a trust fund than he'd ever seen in his entire life, who had escaped a wedding worth millions to sit at his kitchen table and say she felt safe. Safe with him. He turned on his side, restless. What if this wasn't meant to last? What if all of this, her stay, her laughter, the connection that had started to bloom, was temporary? A detour before she returned to a life so far from his. It may as well be another planet. Jack closed his eyes and saw it too clearly. Elena back in her world of designers and private jets, of luxury hotels and assistants who answered her calls. And him. A single dad who fixed broken stools and worked weekends to make rent. They didn't fit. Not really. And yet, she had chosen this. Chosen to sit on his porch with bare feet and paint little wooden birds with Lily. Chosen to walk into his world without flinching. But could it last? Would she still choose it when her family found her? When the cameras came? When the world came crashing through the door shed so carefully shut? The next morning, Jack was quiet. Distant. He made pancakes like usual. Tied Lily's shoes. But when Elena came downstairs in one of his flannel shirts, brushing damp hair behind her ears, he could hardly meet her eyes. She noticed. Jack, she asked gently. He glanced up, then back down at the stove. You're going to have to go back eventually, aren't you? A pause. Yes, she said honestly. But I don't know what back means anymore. He nodded slowly. You're not meant for a life like this. She tilted her head. Do you think I care what I'm meant for? I care about what feels real. Jack turned toward her. And when that world comes knocking again, with your last name and your headlines and all the noise, what happens then? She walked to him then, quiet but firm. Then I figure it out, she said. But I don't want to do it alone. That stopped him. And in the silence that followed, Jack realized something. He wasn't afraid of her past. He was afraid of not being enough for her future. At first it was just a man with a phone. Had come into the cafe for pie and coffee, a stranger Jack hadn't seen before. Clean cut with 2 new boots and sunglasses on a cloudy day. He sat near the window and ordered nothing but a Coke, eyes shifting every time Elena moved behind the counter to help wash mugs or sweep near the bar. Jack noticed. So did Elena. She tried to brush it off, just someone passing through, Shed said, but her smile had faltered and her fingers were shaking as she dried the silverware. Then 2 days later it happened. A photo. Just one. Grainy but clear enough to show her face. No makeup hair, tied up in Jack's old flannel shirt, pouring coffee into a chipped mug at the cafe. The caption was simple. Runaway heiress found Elena Whitmore possibly spotted in small-town cafe. Jack saw it when someone brought a copy of the tabloid into the diner. Then he saw it on Twitter. Then the local news anchor mentioned it with a wink and a smirk. And just like that, the quiet town stopped being quiet. Cars they didn't recognize began idling outside the cafe. A drone buzzed once near Jack's backyard before he knocked it out of the sky with a broom. Lily asked why people kept pointing cameras at the front door when she came home from school. And Elena. She froze. The fear returned to her eyes, swift and unrelenting. That night, Jack found her in the darkened kitchen, scrolling through her phone for the first time in weeks. Her hands trembled. "They've found me," she whispered. "They're everywhere. Reporters, bloggers, family, even my father left a voicemail." Jack took the phone from her gently and set it on the table. "Well, handle this," he said. She looked up, eyes brimming with exhaustion. "How I can't stay here, Jack. It'll just bring trouble to your doorstep. I already have." Jack didn't answer right away. He hated that she felt like a burden when all she'd been was a light soft but steady, a new breath in their quiet life. "This is your life," she said. "Not mine." He stepped closer. "You became part of it the moment you helped Lily with her homework and folded dish towels like it mattered. You belong here, Elena. But I can't make you stay." She blinked quickly, then looked away. "I don't know what to do." Jack took a breath. "Then don't decide tonight. We'll figure it out in the morning. If you want to run again, I'll help you. If you want to fight, I'll stand beside you." Her voice was barely audible. "Even if I'm the reason they're coming after you." He nodded. "Especially then." And in that moment, Elena didn't feel like a billionaire or a runaway bride or a tabloid story. She felt like someone who had finally been given the right to stay or leave without being judged for either. But outside headlights parked across the street. The world had found her. Now it was only a matter of what she would do next. Jack had always known how to fix things. Flat tires, leaky faucets, broken chairs. He could handle scraped knees and spilled milk, hard days and harder nights. Life had taught him that if you worked hard and kept your head down, you could protect the ones you loved. But nothing had prepared him for this. Not for cameras outside Lily's school. Not for the strangers asking questions at the gas station. Not for the sudden feeling that their safe little world was cracking around the edges. And not for the fact that his daughter, his bright, kind, innocent little girl, was now part of someone else's headline. Jack sat at the edge of Lily's bed that night watching her sleep. Her favorite stuffed bear was tucked under one arm, her brow furrowed in a dream. She murmured something turned over, then sighed softly. His chest tightened. He had fought for so long to give her stability, to shield her from the world's chaos, to make sure that even if they had less, they had peace. And now reporters were whispering her name like it was part of a scandal, like his family was entertainment. He stood and walked to the window, looking out into the dark yard where porch lights burned low and shadows moved just beyond the fence. A camera flash lit the street across the way for a brief second. That was the last straw. The next morning he made a call to the sheriff. Not to get Elena in trouble, but to get a no trespassing order posted. He wasn't going to let strangers with microphones camp on his lawn. Not anymore. Later he found Elena in the kitchen clutching a mug of untouched coffee, staring out the window with distant eyes. They were near the school yesterday, he said without preamble, asking about Lily. Her head jerked toward him. "What?" He nodded slowly. "She's not even 10, Elena. And they want photos, quotes, anything." Her face paled. "I'll leave." "No," he said quickly, but not without conflict. "I don't want that. But I have to protect her." Elena blinked rapidly. "I never meant for this. I would never." "I know," he said gently. "I know. You didn't choose this storm to land here. But it did. And now I have to ask myself, How far am I willing to go to keep Lily safe? The silence between them was thick. Not with blame, but with truth. Elena finally spoke, her voice soft. You don't have to choose between her and me. There's a way through this. Let me help. Jack exhaled, running a hand through his hair. You've done nothing but help. But the truth is, I don't know if I can keep her out of this. And I don't know if I can handle losing either of you. Elena stepped forward slowly, carefully, like someone approaching a wounded animal. She placed a hand gently over his. I would never take anything from you, she said. Not her. Not your peace. And if staying means hurting you, then I'll go. Jack looked at her, heart heavy. He didn't want her to go, but he didn't know if wanting was enough. Outside, another car idled by the curb. And inside, Jack felt something he hadn't felt in years, something worse than anger, worse than helplessness. Fear. Not just for his daughter's safety, but for the first time for his heart. Because it had already started falling for someone he might not be able to keep. The kitchen light flickered softly above them, casting long shadows on the floor. Jack stood by the sink, towel in hand, while Elena sat at the table, fingers curled around a mug of untouched tea. The air between them was thick with words not yet spoken. I need to tell you the truth, she said quietly. Jack looked over his shoulder. About what? She didn't meet his eyes. About why I ran. He set the towel down and crossed his arms, leaning against the counter. I figured it wasn't just a canceled honeymoon. She offered a faint smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. No. It was a marriage I was never meant to choose. Jack stayed quiet. He'd learned over years of being a single parent that sometimes silence was kinder than questions. Elena took a breath. The man I was supposed to marry, Lawrence Blakis, the son of one of my father's oldest business partners. It was arranged. Not openly forced, but heavily encouraged. Our families go back generations. Power, image, legacy. You know how it is in that world. He didn't, but he nodded anyway. I tried to be agreeable. I tried to make peace with it, she continued. But the more I got to know him, the more I realized how dangerous that would be. Not just emotionally, but truly dangerous. Jack's brow furrowed. Dangerous how Elena's hands tightened on her mug. He's cruel, Jack. Behind the perfect teeth and the PR smile, he's manipulative. Controlling. I caught him tracking my phone. Reading my private messages. He told me I'd never have a life outside of what he allowed. Jack's jaw tensed. He once humiliated a former friend of mine just for texting me. Froze her accounts. Blacklisted her. He said I needed to understand loyalty. She swallowed. I didn't run because I was scared of a wedding. I ran because I realized he would destroy anyone I loved just to make sure I belonged to him. Jack moved slowly to the table and sat across from her. And your family. They said I was being dramatic, that I had cold feet, that Lawrence would settle down after the wedding. Her laugh was bitter. They were more concerned about headlines than my well-being. Jack stared at her, watching the shadows under her eyes, the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. This wasn't just a rich woman fleeing a fancy wedding. This was someone who had been cornered. Why here, he finally asked. I didn't plan it, she said. I just drove until I ran out of tears. Then I saw the sign for your calf and you. Her voice lowered. You were the first safe thing I'd seen in a long time. Silence again. But this time it was different. Not heavy, just full. Jack leaned forward. You're safe now, and if he ever tries to find you... He will, she interrupted. He already has people looking. But I've been careful. Changed cars. Left my phone behind. I have enough cash for now. But it's only a matter of time before he finds a way to twist this. Jack's fingers drummed once on the table. Then we make it harder for him. She looked up startled. I don't run from things that matter, he said simply. You matter. Lily likes you. And He stopped himself, but the words hung there anyway. And I care more than I want to admit. Elena blinked fast, nodding once like she understood. Because she did. It started with a black SUV parked too long in front of the cafe. Jack noticed it as he flipped the sign to open, his instincts prickling. Out-of-towners weren't rare, especially in summer, but something about the way the vehicle idled silently, windows tinted too dark, made his skin crawl. Inside, Elena was helping Lily with a crossword puzzle in the corner booth. She smiled when she saw Jack glance her way, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd been tense all morning. Jack poured coffee for the regulars, but his eyes kept flicking back to the window. Then, just before noon, 2 sharply dressed men stepped out of the SUV. One of them adjusted a gold watch. The other scanned the cafe like he was casing a target. They walked in. Elena froze. Jack's hands balled into fists behind the counter. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" he asked, voice calm but clipped. "We're looking for someone," the taller man said, glancing around. "Elena Marlowe. She's gone missing," the second man added smoothly. "We're with the Blake family. This is a matter of concern." Jack met Elena's wide eyes. Her hand instinctively reached for Lily's shoulder. "She's not here," Jack replied evenly. The men shared a look. "Are you sure?" the one with the gold watch said, leaning casually on the counter. "We have reason to believe she passed through here." Jack wiped the counter slowly. "I get tourists all the time. People come and go. Can't say I keep tabs on strangers. But you do run a small cafe in a quiet town," the other man said. "Wouldn't be hard for someone to blend in here." Jack stared at them. "You know what is hard? Coming into my place and thinking you can intimidate the people under my roof." They both stiffened. "Elena's a grown woman. If she doesn't want to be found, that's her right. And if she did pass through here and you scared her enough to keep running, then maybe you're the reason she left in the first place." The man with the watch straightened, his tone hardening. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" Jack leaned in. "A couple of suits who think a name and money make the world bend. But let me tell you something. Out here we don't bow to names. We don't sell people out." "You're making a mistake," the second man said coldly. "No," Jack replied. "You did. When you tried to follow her here." They hesitated, maybe unsure if he was bluffing, maybe realizing they weren't getting what they came for. One of them pulled a card from his coat and slid it across the counter. "If she contacts you, have her reach out. It'll be better for everyone." Jack didn't touch it. They left. The moment the door closed, Elena rushed behind the counter. Lily clutched tightly to her side. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't think they'd find me here." Jack looked her straight in the eye. "You don't have to apologize. I should go. You could, but you don't have to. Not anymore." She stared at him. "I'm not scared of them," Jack said quietly. "I'm scared of what it'll do to you if you keep running. And I'm scared of what it'll do to me if you leave." A beat passed. Then she did something unexpected. She hugged him, tight, without a word, her shoulders shaking not from fear this time, but from relief. Jack wrapped his arms around her, and for a moment the world outside didn't matter. The cafe had long since closed. The lights were dimmed, the chairs stacked on tables, and Lily had been asleep for hours upstairs, curled up with her stuffed penguin in dreams as soft as the lullaby Elena had sung beside her. Jack sat in the kitchen nursing lukewarm coffee, staring at the door to the back room. He could hear movement. Elena was packing. Again. He waited, patient, quiet, until the sound of a zipper confirmed what he already knew. She emerged a moment later with her small duffel bag slung over one shoulder and eyes that looked like they'd already cried too much for one night. "I was hoping you'd be asleep," she whispered. "I figured you'd try this," Jack replied, setting his mug down gently. "That's why I stayed up." She stood by the door, hesitant like a shadow trying not to touch the light. They'll come back, Jack. Men like Lawrence don't give up. And now that they know I was here, you and Lily aren't safe. Jack exhaled. You really think you're safer out there alone? I don't have a choice. Her voice broke a little. He's powerful, Jack. He'll turn the story into whatever he wants it to be. That I'm unstable, kidnapped, manipulated. That you're taking advantage of me. Jack stepped closer, voice low but steady. Do you really think I care what some billionaire in a suit says about me? She looked up, eyes full of pain. You should care about Lily. What if something happened to her because of me? At that, Jack's jaw clenched, but his voice remained soft. Then we protect her. Together. Elena shook her head. I'm not your responsibility. And I'm not hers either. You're not a burden, Elena. He took another step. Lily asks about you when you're not around. She calls you her almost mom. She made that up herself. Her hand flew to her mouth, eyes watering instantly. She doesn't see you as some passing tourist. Neither do I. Elena turned away, visibly shaken. You don't know what Lawrence is capable of. What he'll do to win. I know what I'm capable of too, Jack replied. And I don't run from people I care about. She faced him slowly. What if I asked you to let me go? Would you try to stop me? Jack's silence said everything. I don't want to run anymore, she said, her voice barely a whisper. But I also don't want to be the reason you or Lily get hurt. Jack walked up to her, resting a gentle hand on her arm. Then don't leave. Stay, and let me protect you the way no one else ever did. Not because you owe me anything, but because you're not alone anymore. Elena's lips parted like she wanted to respond, but her voice failed her. Instead, she leaned in and let her forehead rest against his chest. For a long time, they stood there, still fragile, unspoken truths hanging between them. She didn't drop the bag, but she didn't pick it back up either. And in that moment, that was enough. The sky was blue, the cupcakes were pink, and Lily's laughter danced through the air like confetti. Jack had spent 2 days preparing the little backyard behind the cafe for her birthday. Paper lanterns hung between trees, the scent of grilled cheese and lemonade floated from the kitchen, and a handmade banner read, "Happy 7th Birthday, Lily," in painted bubble letters. It wasn't extravagant, but it was everything Lily had hoped for, and more because Elena was there. She had helped wrap the gifts, braided Lily's hair with yellow ribbon, and even wore a flower crown Lily had made from dandelions and tape. For the first time in years, Jack watched his daughter glow with joy, unburdened by the weight of less. Half the town had shown up. Locals who came for coffee every morning, neighbors who had watched Lily grow, and even shy Mrs. Finley from the bookstore, who rarely left her shop, but came bearing a book wrapped in brown paper. It was the kind of afternoon that made Jack believe things might finally be okay. Until the white SUV pulled up to the curb. 2 men stepped out, camera crew in tow. A third man in sunglasses followed, speaking into his phone. The air shifted instantly. Elena stiffened beside the cake table. Jack's stomach dropped. The man in sunglasses lowered his phone and looked directly at her. "Elena Marlowe," he shouted. "Is it true you've been hiding here? Are you really engaged to Lawrence Blake?" Children fell silent. Parents turned. Even the music faltered in the background. Jack stepped in front of Elena like a wall. "You need to leave," he said firmly. The cameraman didn't stop filming. "Sir, we're just here for a comment. The public wants to know why I said leave." Jack's voice cut sharper this time, fists clenched at his sides. "This is a child's birthday, not a tabloid headline." Elena's face had gone pale. Lily clung to her leg, confused and scared. "Miss Marlowe." The man continued, ignoring Jack. "Is it true you were seen with this man multiple times over the last few weeks? Have you eloped?" Jack stepped forward. "You need to put the camera down. Turn around and never come back to this town," he growled. The cameraman hesitated. Then someone else spoke. We called the sheriff. It was Mr. Hayes, the grocer. A couple of other townsfolk were standing together. Now arms crossed, eyes narrowed. The mailman. The lady from the flower shop. Even shy Mrs. Finley. "Y'all are trespassing the flower shop," lady added. "This is our town. And that girl's birthday. Show some decency." Within moments, the press crew realized they were outnumbered and not welcome. The SUV peeled away in silence. Jack turned to Elena. She was still trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want this. I never wanted to ruin—" "You didn't ruin anything," Jack interrupted gently. "They did. And we're not letting them steal this day from Lily." Elena nodded, blinking back tears. She was so happy. Jack looked down at Lily, who was staring up at them with big, worried eyes. He crouched down. "Hey, Munchkin. You okay?" Lily nodded slowly. Why were those men yelling at Elena? Jack took a deep breath. They were confused. They thought Elena was someone else. Lily turned to Elena. "You're still coming to cake, right?" Elena knelt down beside her. "Only if I get the biggest slice." That earned a smile. Soon music returned. Someone relit the candles. And though a shadow had passed over the party, the sun broke through again, because no one, not even the press, could take away the family they'd built. The morning sun rose gently over the quiet town, brushing its golden fingers across calf windows and blooming geraniums. But inside the little apartment above the calf, the light felt hollow. Jack stirred first, as always, expecting to hear the soft clinking of dishes in the kitchen, or maybe the hum of Elena's low singing voice as she prepared breakfast. Instead, there was silence. He blinked, confused, glancing at the clock. 14. Elena always beat him to the kettle. He tiptoed out of the bedroom to check the kitchen. Empty. The hallway. Empty. Her shoes were gone. Her bag. Gone. Jack's heart sank in a slow, terrifying way that made his breath catch. A folded piece of paper sat on the counter, weighed down by the coffee mug she used every morning. It was the only thing she'd left behind. He picked it up. Her handwriting was unmistakable, looped, careful, warm. "Jack. I'm sorry. I should have said goodbye, but I wouldn't have had the courage if I looked you in the eyes. I can't be the reason your daughter's birthday ends in fear. I can't bring cameras and scandal into her life. You've built something beautiful here, and I'm afraid if I stay, it'll destroy it. Thank you for giving me peace, even if only for a little while. For showing me what kindness really looks like. And for reminding me I'm more than a last name or a headline. Please tell Lily I love her braids, and her laugh and her heart. You two are everything good in this world. Elena." Jack stood frozen, her words ringing through the kitchen like the fading echo of a melody. A chair scraped behind him. Lily, still in her pajamas, rubbed sleep from her eyes. "Where's Elena?" she asked. Jack hesitated. Lied. "She had to leave early, sweetheart." Lily's brow furrowed. "Is she coming back?" Jack knelt and pulled her into his arms. "I don't know." He whispered truth heavy in his chest. But in his heart, he already feared the answer. The silence in the apartment above the calf was no longer peaceful. It was hollow. It had been 3 days since Elena left without a word, other than the note Jack now kept folded in his wallet like a scar. He read it too often. Memorized every loop of her handwriting, every sentence that sounded like goodbye, but still somehow felt like love. Lily noticed the difference too. She stopped asking if Elena was coming back. She stopped humming when she colored. Even her usual after-school stories came out softer, as if her voice didn't want to disturb the quiet emptiness Elena had left behind. Jack tried to fill the space. He baked more, told Lily longer bedtime stories, offered her 2 scoops of ice cream instead of 1, But nothing quite replaced the way Elena used to sit cross-legged on the couch helping Lily with piano drills or sneaking extra marshmallows into their cocoa. It wasn't just Lily who missed her. Jack did too. Every morning he didn't smell coffee. Every evening he didn't hear her laugh. Every night when he reached for a plate, she used to automatically set next to his. And worst of all, he blamed himself. He'd been so protective, so careful about their boundaries, about not letting anyone interfere with Lily's safety or their quiet life. But maybe in all that control had pushed Elena away when what she needed most was someone to fight for her, not protect from her. He sat on the back steps of the cafe one night staring at the gravel lot, watching mist rise from the pavement after a light rain. He sipped lukewarm tea. Alone. Mr. Hayes passed by on his evening walk. "She was a good woman," the old grocer said gently, pausing by the fence. "Had a kind heart." "We could all see that." Jack nodded, unable to trust his voice. "You know, Mr. Hayes added, my wife left me once. For 3 weeks. Said I made her feel like a guest in her own home. Took me that long to realize kindness needs room to breathe, not just protection." Then he tipped his cap and walked on. Jack sat there long after the street lamps blinked on. Inside the house, Elena's favorite mug still sat in the drying rack. Her scent still clung to the pillowcase Lily had insisted they not wash yet. The home wasn't empty of her, just waiting. And Jack began to wonder, not where she had gone, but how to get her back. The rain had returned. Not a storm, but a soft drizzle that tapped gently on the windows of the cafe like a memory asking to be let in. Jack stood in the small storage closet off the kitchen, searching for a tin of cinnamon Lily had begged for in her morning oatmeal. The shelf was cluttered, part spice rack, part forgotten mail and odds and ends Elena had tried to organize during her stay. As he reached up, his hand knocked over an old cigar box that had been gathering dust on the top shelf. It fell with a dull thud and scattered its contents across the floor: paper clips, stray receipts, a roll of twine, and a bundle of napkins held together with a hair tie. Something caught his eye. A folded page tucked between 2 napkins addressed simply, "For Jack, if I ever had the courage." His breath caught. He knelt slowly, fingers trembling as he opened the page. Her handwriting, looped delicate, unmistakably hers, stared back at him. But this time it wasn't careful like the note she'd left behind. It was raw, unfiltered. A letter she never meant for him to find. He read, "Dear Jack, sometimes I watch you and Lily and think this is what the world was supposed to be. Not mansions or diamonds or interviews or headlines. Just a man with flour on his shirt kneeling to tie his daughter's shoelace. Just a little girl dancing barefoot in a cafe after closing hours. I thought I was running away, but maybe I was running towards something and I didn't know it yet. You never asked who I was, never treated me like a guest, never asked what I owned. You just let me be. That meant more to me than you'll ever know. You and Lily made me remember who I am when no one is watching. And if I had a choice, if there weren't cameras and scandals and parents who measure love and power, I'd stay. I'd stay and pour coffee beside you, sweep up cookie crumbs with Lily, and grow old in a town where people wave from porches and mean it. But I'm afraid of ruining it. I'm afraid you'll resent me when the world finds out who I am. Still, part of me wishes you'd find this, because if you do, it means you're still thinking of me too. Elena." Jack read the letter twice, 3 times. He sat down on the floor, surrounded by old receipts and forgotten things, and let the ache in his chest rise like a tide. But this time it wasn't just pain. It was something more. Hope. Because Elena hadn't just run. She had wanted to stay. Loved the life he offered. Craved it more than the one she'd been born into. He folded the letter carefully as if it were made of glass. And then he stood. It was time to go find her. Not because she needed rescuing, but because maybe for once she deserved to be the one someone ran toward. The roads out of town were still wet from the morning rain shimmering under the soft gold light of the late afternoon sun. Jack gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white as heart pounding harder with every mile. Lily sat in the back seat, her head resting against her stuffed bunny eyes wide with questions she hadn't yet found the words to ask. But she knew something had changed. She felt it in her father's silence, in the urgency with which he had packed a bag, scribbled a note for their neighbor to check on the calf, and told her they were going on a little trip to see someone important. They hadn't been to the city in years. Jack hated it. The noise, the sharp edges, the way it swallowed people whole. But today, none of that mattered. All that mattered was Elena. He had read her letter again that morning, twice before sunrise, once over coffee, and once more just before he buttoned his shirt and grabbed his truck keys. Every word echoed in his mind, ringing louder than the doubts. If you do find this, it means you're still thinking of me too. He didn't know where to start exactly, but he remembered something. The last time they'd really talked. Lena had mentioned a rooftop garden in the city, a place she used to sneak away to as a child before her parents tried to buy her a better view. She had said it with a wistful laugh, not knowing he'd held on to the detail like a lifeline. It was a long shot, but it was something. They reached the city just after dusk. Buildings rose like giants around them, cold and unfamiliar. Jack's flannel shirt felt out of place among the sleek jackets and designer heels. His old truck drew glances as they pulled into a parking garage near the financial district. He turned to Lily. "You okay, kiddo?" She nodded bravely. "Are we looking for the lady with the pretty smile?" Jack smiled faintly, heart-tugging. "Yeah, we are." He carried her on his shoulders through the rush of people, through crowds who didn't look up, through avenues lit by street lamps and screens, past places Elena once called home but never felt at home in. Finally they found the building, old, quiet, set back from the road like it was trying to hide from the modern world. The doorman eyed Jack and Lily warily, but when Jack mentioned the rooftop garden and said her name, Elena Beaumont, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. He didn't ask questions, just waved them through. They took the elevator to the top, and there, among the ivy-covered trellises and quiet benches under strings of fairy lights that glowed like stars caught in glass jars, she stood, alone, facing the skyline, back turned, wind tugging gently at her hair. Jack stepped forward. "Elena." She turned. The shock in her eyes gave way to something deeper. Relief, disbelief, and something trembling on the edge of tears. "You came," she whispered. He nodded, his voice thick. "I read your letter." Silence stretched between them, and then Elena dropped her purse and ran right into his arms. The next morning the calf was busier than usual, not with customers but with whispers. Jack was behind the counter wiping down mugs and trying to keep things normal. Lily was in the corner booth with her sketchpad humming quietly as she drew her version of the rooftop garden in the stars. But every so often a customer would glance at the newspaper left on the counter, the front page. There she was, Elena Beaumont, hair tied back, eyes clear, shoulders straight, standing in front of a dozen microphones, and behind her, the logo of Beaumont International Holdings. Billionaire heiress announces departure from family business. "I've spent too long trying to live a life others designed for me," she said. "But that life doesn't belong to me anymore. I'm choosing a different path I never imagined until I stepped out of my own shadow." The photo showed her mid-sentence, eyes soft but certain. No glittering dress, no security detail. Just a woman owning her voice. Jack stared at it for a long time. He hadn't known she was doing this. When they'd left the rooftop the night before, there were no grand plans. Just take-out laughter, Lily falling asleep with her head on Elena's lap. It had felt like they had stepped into their own quiet bubble, safe, ordinary, real. Now she had burst the bubble for the whole world to see. The bell above the cafe door rang, and there she was again, in person this time, wearing jeans and sneakers, holding a bag of pastries in one hand and a newspaper in the other. "I brought breakfast," she said casually, but her smile was nervous. Jack raised an eyebrow, motioning toward the counter. "You're famous now." She groaned softly and held up the paper. "I hate this photo. I look like I'm about to sneeze." He chuckled. "You look brave." I felt terrified. Jack walked around the counter and pulled her into a quiet hug, one that didn't need words. Lily peeked up from her drawing and waved. "You sure about all this?" he asked gently. Elena pulled back and looked him in the eye. "I've never been more sure of anything. I'm not running anymore, Jack. Not from who I am, and not from you." His throat tightened. "You know what this means, right? There'll be cameras, noise, people showing up here trying to make it a headline." "I know," she said. "But I also know this: if I had to choose between being safe and being true, I'd choose true." She glanced around the cafe, at the worn wooden booths, the tiny counter bell, the child humming under the window. "This place," she whispered, "is the first real thing I've known in years, and I'm not letting it go." Jack took her hand, then let the moment settle in. She wasn't lost anymore. She had chosen her direction, and she had chosen them. It had been 2 days. 2 long, confusing, quiet days since Elena had made her public statement. Jack hadn't heard from her since. Not a message, not a call, and not a single clue about where she'd gone. The press had been circling town like buzzards after her announcement, poking into his cafe, asking questions about their relationship, about her mysterious escape. Jack gave them nothing. He hated attention. He hated the limelight. But what he hated more was not knowing where she'd gone. So after the early morning rush at the cafe, Jack asked his neighbor to watch Lily for a few hours and headed into town. He wasn't entirely sure what he was looking for. Maybe space. Maybe peace. Maybe her. The streets were quiet. He ducked into a side road somewhere near the old university library. His feet led him to a little spot he hadn't noticed in years, a tiny bookshop tucked between a florist and a watch repair shop. He used to come here before Lily was born, before life had hardened around survival. The Willow Nook Cafe and Books. The bell chimed overhead as he pushed open the door. The smell of old pages and fresh scones hit him like a wave of memory. And there she was, Elena, tucked in the back corner, curled up in an armchair with a half-drunk cup of coffee and a paperback folded over one knee. Her hair was down, no makeup, no cameras, no pressure, just her. Jack stood frozen for a second. She looked peaceful. He almost didn't want to disturb her. But then she looked up and saw him. She blinked once. Then her eyes widened and her lips parted in surprise. "Jack," she whispered. He walked toward her slowly. "I wasn't sure if you wanted to be found." A small smile tugged at her mouth. "I was hoping you'd try." She closed the book gently and set it aside. "I needed to breathe," she said. "To remember what it felt like to walk into a place and not be seen as anyone else." He nodded. "I get it. This place, it kind of hugs you quiet, doesn't it?" Elena looked down for a moment, then back up. "Did you think I ran away again? I didn't want to believe that. But," he exhaled, "I didn't know." "I'm not running this time," she said softly. "I'm just resting, choosing. Choosing what?" She looked at him with something gentle and open in her eyes. "Choosing you, Jack. But I needed to come to that decision not as a runaway, not as a billionaire, not as anyone but myself." He swallowed hard. "You're really sure?" She nodded. And in that quiet bookshop cafe, surrounded by shelves of forgotten stories and the distant clink of coffee spoons, they found something between them that felt real again. No headlines, no pressure. Just 2 people. And a second chance. The sun had already dipped behind the hills by the time Jack and Elena returned to the cafe. The lights inside were dimmed, the sign flipped to closed, and Lily had gone home with the neighbor after dinner. It was quiet now, the kind of quiet Jack used to find lonely. But tonight it felt different, full, like something was waiting to be said. Jack made them tea strong and simple. Elena leaned against the counter, hands wrapped around the warm mug. No cameras, no bodyguards, no masks, just two people. "You don't owe me anything," Jack said after a long silence, not looking at her. "You never did." "I know," Elena replied, her voice soft. "But I think I owe myself the truth, and I want you to hear it too." He nodded, sat down across from her at the small table by the window. "I didn't leave because I was afraid of you," she began. "I left because I was afraid of who I was when I wasn't pretending anymore." Jack watched her carefully, saying nothing. "All my life I was someone's daughter, someone's fiancée, someone's headline. And then I met you and Lily, and for the first time I wasn't anyone else. I was just me. But that scared me more than anything." Jack finally spoke. "You didn't look scared when you were reading to Lily in the window, or when you were dancing with her in the kitchen." Elena smiled faintly. "That's when I felt safe, but I didn't know if I deserved it." He leaned forward, hands clasped. "You deserve peace, Elena. Not because of what you've been through, but because you're human, same as the rest of us." She looked down into her cup. "What about you? What are you afraid of?" Jack hesitated. "My daughter already lost her mom. I've spent every day since making sure she never feels that kind of loss again. And then you came, an unexpected kind, everything Lily needed. And it terrified me how quickly she cared about you." His voice was low now. "Because what if you left?" Elena reached across the table and gently took his hand. "I'm not leaving," she said. "Not unless you ask me to." He met her eyes, and for the first time there was no pretending, no guessing, just two hearts stripped bare. "I don't want perfect," Jack said. "I just want real." Elena smiled through tears. "Then that's exactly what I'm offering." They didn't need to kiss, not yet. They just sat there, hands intertwined, the silence between them no longer empty, but full of something true. The next morning dawned slow and golden over the hills, casting soft light into the cafe windows as Jack brewed the first pot of coffee. The world outside was still quiet, too early for customers, too early even for the regulars. Elena padded down the stairs from the small apartment above the cafe, wrapped in a worn flannel borrowed from Jack. She looked sleep-soft and peaceful, more like the woman he'd come to know than the heiress the world had once chased. He was pouring her a cup when Lily came bounding into the cafe, her little sneakers untied, and hair already coming loose from its braid. "Elena," she cried. Before either adult could respond, Lily threw her arms around Elena's legs and hugged her tightly. "You came back." Elena bent down, smiling, brushing a loose curl behind Lily's ear. "I promised I would, didn't I?" "You always keep your promises," Lily said proudly. Jack leaned on the counter, watching them. His heart caught somewhere between pride and awe. Elena reached into the pocket of her coat, a simple canvas jacket she'd worn the day before. Slowly, carefully, she unfolded a small, wrinkled piece of paper. It was Lily's crayon drawing. The one she'd given her the first morning at the Caf Duo, stick figures holding hands in front of a big window, the sun bright overhead, and a heart floating between them. It had said in shaky handwriting, "Miss Elena, you can sit with us if you want." "I kept it," Elena said, her voice quiet, almost reverent. Jack blinked, his throat tightening. "Even when I went back," she continued. "Even when I had to wear the dress, smile for the cameras, and pretend I wasn't falling apart, I kept this in my pocket. It reminded me that there was a world outside all of that. A world where someone drew me with a crayon and thought I belonged." Lily beamed. "You do belong." Jack said nothing for a moment. Then he crossed the room and sat beside them. "That drawing, it was Lily's way of saying you mattered," he said gently, "even before you were ready to believe it yourself." Elena looked between the two of them, her eyes glassy. "And now I do believe it." She folded the drawing again carefully like it was something precious, and tucked it back into her jacket pocket. Not because she had to, but because she still needed the reminder sometimes. Not of who she used to be, but of who she was becoming, with them. The calf was beginning to hum again. Mornings filled with the soft chime of the bell above the door, regulars chatting in the corner booth, and the comforting clink of mugs meeting saucers. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. And lately it had begun to feel that way for Elena, too. She no longer floated around like a guest, unsure of where to stand or how long she was welcome. Instead, she moved behind the counter with practiced ease, refilling coffee cups, wiping down tables, and listening intently to stories from people who'd stopped seeing her as a stranger. Jack watched her now, leaning in the doorway between the kitchen and the front room. She was laughing at something old Bill had said, a real laugh, not the poised kind she used to wear like a mask. Lily was nearby, coloring with a friend, completely at ease. Everything about the moment felt right. After closing time, Jack found her standing near the window, watching the last of the daylight fade behind the hills. The room was quiet again, except for the soft hum of the cooler, and Lily's giggles upstairs as she played with her doll. He walked over, hands tucked into his back pockets. "You ever think about staying?" She turned, surprised by the question, but not by the tone. It was soft, steady, like him. "I do," she said truthfully. "Every day." He nodded, stepped a little closer. "Then maybe it's time I stopped dancing around it." She tilted her head slightly. Jack took a breath. "I don't want you to feel like a guest anymore, Elena. Not here. Not with us. I want this calf, this life, me and Lily. I want all of it to be your home too. Not just for a while. For real." Her lips parted slightly like she might say something, but nothing came out. Jack smiled, nervous. "I know it's not a palace. There's no red carpet, no drivers, no flashbulbs, but there's a girl upstairs who draws you into every picture she makes, and there's a man standing in front of you who doesn't want to imagine another morning without you here." For a moment, Elena just stared at him, breath caught in her chest. "Then I've been waiting for you to say that," she whispered. His smile grew, a rare kind of softness in his eyes. "And I've been trying to find the right words," he replied. She stepped into him, gently placing her hand on his chest. "You just did." Outside, the wind rustled the trees. Inside, the quiet had never felt more alive. Not a grand proposal, not a fairy tale ending. Just a simple, honest invitation into something real. And for Elena, who had run from everything that glittered, that was the most beautiful offer of all. The small mountain town had a memory like a chalkboard, slow, to write anything down quick, to smudge away the unfamiliar. At first, when Elena had arrived, disoriented, quiet, and overdressed for the dusty sidewalks, the townsfolk gave her looks that said she doesn't belong here. Her fine posture, careful silences, and clipped answers whispered of money and mystery. And in a place where people valued truth and presence over polish, that made them wary. But time has a way of softening sharp lines, and kindness has a way of rewriting people's stories. It wasn't one grand gesture that changed their minds. It was dozens of little moments. The way she helped Mr. Collins carry his groceries after his hip surgery, even though the bags split and she laughed when she got flour on her blouse. The way she stood beside Lily at the school bake sale and nervously asked how to use the old cash box, listening intently when the PTA moms explained. The way she started remembering everyone's coffee order at the calf, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Word got around. That fancy woman's not so fancy after all, they'd say. She helped my niece find her lost dog. She paid for the Sanders boys' piano lessons, didn't tell a soul. She brings Jack dinner when he's too tired to cook after close. No one could pin down when the shift happened, but one day folks just started waving first. And when she passed the old bookstore, the owner gave her a quiet smile and said, "Afternoon, Elena," like she'd always lived here. On a crisp Saturday morning, the town square hosted its annual harvest market. There were apple pies and hand-knitted scarves, warm cider and booths lined with homemade candles. Jack and Lily ran the calf's little table, but it was Elena who greeted visitors with Lily's cinnamon rolls and her own handmade signs. "Didn't think she'd last a week here," someone whispered, watching her laugh with the local librarian. "She's not just lasting," came the reply. "She's belonging." It wasn't about money anymore. It wasn't even about mystery. It was about how she looked when she listened, how she stood beside Jack like she'd always been there, and how Lily tugged at her sleeve, calling her Elena with the kind of trust only children give freely. For a woman who once had the world at her feet, it was this quiet place that finally gave her a home. The diner was quiet that evening, the soft hum of an old jukebox playing something gentle and nostalgic in the corner. A few locals sat scattered in booths sipping coffee and chatting in low tones. Outside, the small town was winding down. Streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. Jack had asked Elena to meet him there. No fanfare, no candlelight, just the place where everything had started. Elena arrived wearing a soft blue dress, and her hair loosely tied back, strands falling naturally around her face. She looked at home here now, not like the lost tourist he'd met months ago, running from a wedding, a name, a life. She smiled when she saw him at their usual booth, Lily's coloring book still tucked in the corner, 2 mugs already waiting. Jack stood up and pulled out the seat for her, nerves flickering behind his usually calm eyes. "You're early," she teased, gently sitting down. "I didn't want to be late," he said, clearing his throat. "Not tonight." Elena tilted her head. "What's tonight?" Jack glanced out the window as if the sky might answer for him. Then he turned back to her. "I've been thinking a lot," he began, voice steady but soft. "About you. About Lily. About how I didn't know I was missing anything until you showed up outside this place in a torn dress and dusty shoes." Elena smiled, her eyes glassy. "You changed everything, Elena. Not with money, not with your last name, but with the way you sat at my table and made it feel like home." Her lips parted, breath catching. "I never wanted to need anyone again," he said. "But now I can't imagine a single morning without hearing your voice or seeing you laugh with Lily. You brought color back into my life and peace. Real peace." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, not velvet, not flashy. Just simple, like him. Like them. "I don't have a grand gesture or a fancy place to ask this. But I have love. And I have this diner. And I have a daughter who adores you." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, delicate silver with a single stone. Understated. Beautiful. "Elena Morgan, will you marry me?" She covered her mouth, the emotion spilling out in a quiet laugh, tears already running down her cheeks. She nodded before she could find her voice. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Jack. 1,000 times yes." The few patrons nearby clapped softly. The waitress dabbed her eyes, and Lily, who had been hiding in the kitchen with a knowing grin, ran out to hug them both. And there, in the very booth where a stranger once became something so much more, Jack and Elena began the next chapter of their story, not with fireworks, but with something even better: truth, love, and home. The storefront still bore the faded letters of its previous name, the Corner Nook. The windows were dusty, the awning a little frayed, and the bell above the door rang like it hadn't been touched in years. But Elena saw something else entirely possibility. It was nestled between the post office and the bakery on Main Street, just a few blocks from the diner. Small town foot traffic, warm-hearted neighbors, and a town that now felt more like home than any city skyline ever had. The for lease sign had been crooked in the window for months. When Elena inquired, the owner, a soft-spoken older woman named Margaret, nearly wept with joy. "I used to run this place with my husband," she said. "Books and coffee. It was his dream. After he passed, I couldn't keep it up alone." Elena smiled, her heart tugging gently. "Maybe we could make it someone else's dream again." Margaret nodded, placing the old keys into Elena's hands with reverence. The renovations began modestly. Elena kept the original wooden shelves, preserving their charm, but added warm lighting, cozy reading nooks, and a little children's corner with pillows, crayons, and shelves low enough for Lily to reach. The scent of freshly ground coffee once again filled the air, thanks to a second-hand espresso machine Jack helped install one weekend. The townspeople watched curiously at first. The tourist had become a fixture, and now she was pouring energy into the community. And not just money herself, her time, her heart. She named it Second Chapter. I figured it was fitting she told Jack one evening as they stood outside watching Lily read a picture book under the twinkle lights inside. "For me and for this place." Jack kissed her temple gently. "It suits you." Claire, the high school English teacher, started hosting weekly book clubs there. Local authors asked to do readings. And every Saturday morning, Elena read stories aloud to groups of children, Lily always in the front row, eyes wide. But it wasn't just a business. It became her roots. She sponsored book drives, donated quiet study kits to the school, started a pay-it-forward coffee board where anyone could leave a drink for someone in need. One day, Elena stood at the front counter, sunlight pouring through the windows, as she rang up an older man buying a poetry book. "I heard this used to be a good place," he said kindly. "Looks like it still is." Elena smiled. "It's better now. It's home." Jack walked in minutes later with Lily on his shoulders, the little girl giggling, waving at the regulars. Elena's heart swelled. She hadn't just fallen in love with a man. She had fallen into belonging. And with every story on the shelf, every smile at the counter, every laugh over coffee, she was writing a new chapter of her life. One rooted not in wealth or escape, but in love, community, and an ordinary town that gave her something extraordinary. A place to stay, a reason to grow, and a life, finally, that was hers. The sun had dipped behind the hills, casting the sky in hues of lavender and soft gold. String lights twinkled along the cafe's awning, swaying gently in the evening breeze. The air carried the warm scent of grilled cheese tomato soup and something sweeter peace. Outside the cafe, one long wooden table had been set, not for a crowd, not for spectacle, just for three. Elena adjusted the plates with a quiet smile. No makeup, no designer gown, just her in a soft linen dress, hair loosely braided by Lily's small, proud hands. She glanced at the old chalkboard menu hanging behind the cafe's counter where someone had written, "Tonight's special, a life worth staying." For Jack emerged from inside with 2 root beers and a chocolate milk balanced on a tray. "She wants the milk with the curly straw," he said with mock seriousness, handing the drink to Lily, who was already halfway into her grilled cheese. "I earned that straw," Lily said with a proud nod, swinging her feet under the bench. Elena laughed. "You did. You read 3 whole chapters today." "She's trying to beat your reading speed," Jack said to Elena. "Told me she'll own your bookstore one day." "Oh, is that so?" Elena leaned in toward Lily. "I hope you'll still let me work there. Only if you let me pay you in cookies." Lily grinned. They all laughed and for a long moment said nothing more. Just the clink of forks, the rustle of napkins, the sounds of a small town closing in for the night. No one was watching them. No cameras, no reporters, no whispers about who Elena used to be. Because here in this tiny cafe with flickering lights and cracked pavement beneath their feet, she wasn't a billionaire heiress escaping a gilded cage. She was just a woman who'd found something real. Jack reached over and took her hand. His fingers were rough, warm, steady. "You know," he said quietly, "when I first saw you outside that cafe, I thought you were lost." Elena smiled. I was. And now he asked. She looked at Lily, then at the calf, then back at him. Now she said softly, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The stars blinked to life above them, humble and unnoticed by the rest of the world, but dazzling to the ones who chose to look. And under their glow, a little girl with a pink straw, a quiet man with rough hands, and a woman who had run from everything, sat together in a moment that needed no stage, no riches, no grand applause. Only each other, only love. And that was more than enough.